Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Thursday, the 11th of April, 2019, and tonight's topic, report. Silver demand shifts to jewelry and silverware. Tonight we're going to take a look at the most recent Silver Institute report on silver supply and demand, focusing mostly on the demand profile of silver over the past 10 years. Got a bunch of charts for you. We're going to take a look at those and see what's been changing in the demand profile. We're also going to take a look at scrap silver. There's a lot of stories out there about how silver just gets used and thrown away, and that is why silver is rarer than gold. And silver is so useful in our lives. We're going to learn all about how useful silver is. It's not how useful it is. You can't be satisfied with generalities. You need to know specifically how much of that usefulness translates into millions of ounces or hundreds of thousands of ounces of demand. So we're going to take a look at the demand profile of silver over the last 10 years, and then we're going to take a look at the scrap silver, which is silver that supposedly never comes back to market because it's thrown away, never to be seen again. That is not true. It's all a function of price. We've got some charts to show when the price rises, somehow people find the silver that was thrown away or forgotten about in draws or in silverware or in collections they forgot that they even had. So let's take a look now at what we have by way of the most recent Silver Institute numbers. What I want to do is show you a bunch of comparative charts where we were and where we've been and perhaps where we're headed. Back in 2005 or so, very few people bought silver coins, rounds, and bars for investment. There was a decent gold demand, but the American Silver Eagle program never really took off until about 2008 or 9 after the financial crisis. So the first chart we're going to take a look at reflects the numbers from the Silver Institute. Not the number, I can give you those numbers, but on the chart, you're just going to see the percentages of silver as part of the overall demand in the different areas. So in 2009, industrial silver made up 63% of overall silver demand. It's a very commodity-driven metal. Coins and bars were less than 10%. Now, coins and bars, to me, reflect the investment side of the physical demand. Now, there is ETF demand. Put that aside. People that are stackers, collectors, less than 10% in 2009. So industry was the big chunk of the silver demand. Now, in 2009, the industrial demand was about 525 million ounces. And the amount of coins, rounds, and bars that they sold was about 80 million ounces. Not bad, but you can see that the industry was 528 versus about 80 million ounces. Jewelry is the second largest component in 2009. That was 21%. That's 176 million. And silverware, which had been in steep decline, was in decline until about 2013, when they only used 43 million ounces to make silverware, was at about 50 million ounces in 2009. So the big drivers of silver demand in 2009, almost 85%, was industry and jewelry. And then with silverware, it's over 90%. And coins, rounds, and bars as an investment portion of silver demand was under 10%. Now this ties into my concept. The reason the gold-silver ratio is low is for two reasons. That the investment component of silver's overall demand is small compared to gold, which is about 40-45%. And the remaining demand for gold is jewelry, which is expensive jewelry, in some respects investment jewelry, and a little bit of industry, maybe 9-10%. So the 2009 silver demand was mostly industry, jewelry, and then add in silverware, very, very little coins, rounds, and bars. Now what's happened with silver demand You say, well, that's good because silver is so useful in our lives. We could not lead our lives without silver. They are finding more uses for silver every day, like yoga pants. You hear that kind of nonsense. Well, actually, the uses for silver in industry on an aggregate basis and in ounces required are on the decline. So even though the bulk of silver demand is for industry, we're going to see that industrial demand is declining and is slowing. And that includes solar panels, photography, chemical uses, electronics. And you say, well, they're using more electronics are being made every day. Yep, they're being made smaller. They're using less silver in per unit. Same with solar energy. They're thrifting. They're using less. Even though they're making more solar panels and manufacturing more electronic devices, they're using less silver. So that's 2009, and the industrial demand is 63%. Let's move on now to 2010. Now, 2010, we see a big increase in coin rounds and bars. Industry goes up. So the industrial amounts of silver used in 2010 went to 633 million. That was one of the largest amounts in the decade of 2010 to 2019. The largest was 2011, when 653 million ounces were used. But that 633 million ounces accounted for 60%. Jewelry, which had gone up that year to 190 million ounces, was 18%. Silverware dropped to 51 million ounces, but the coins, rounds, and bars jumped from 79 million all the way to 174 million. So you saw a big burst in investment silver demand in 2010, driving the investment demand of silver all the way to 16%, even though we saw increases in industry, jewelry, and silverware in 2010. So from 2009 to 2010, we had a demand increase across the board. And we pretty much saw decent increases of silver demand all the way to 2015. Look at this, 2015. Coins, rounds, and bars, which are the investment component of the physical silver demand, went from 9% in 2009 to near over 25% in 2015, pushing aside industry to just 50%. Now, industrial demand in 2015, however, did decline from 633 million ounces in 2010 down to 582 million ounces in 2015, while coins, rounds, and bars skyrocketed from 79.6 million ounces all the way to 293 million ounces in 2015. So big increase in coins, rounds, and bars. And silverware and jewelry demand from 2009 and 10 to 2015, both of those grew. So jewelry grew from 190 million ounces in 2010 all the way to 223 million ounces. And silverware grew from 51 million ounces to 63 million ounces. So again, between 2009, 10, all the way up to 15, we saw hefty increases in all of the demands for silver, the major demands for silver, jewelry, coins and bars, silverware, and industry. But the last couple of years have not really been that kind to silver demand across the board. Look at 2018. While coins, rounds, and bars are 17.5% up from the 9% in 2009, they declined from a peak of 293 million ounces in 2015 to just 181 million ounces in 2018. Silverware, however, it's an interesting demand is 70% of silverware demand comes from India, hit a multi-year peak in 2015 at 63 million ounces, 63.2 million ounces, and in 2018 it was still at 61 million ounces, but in 2011 it was only at 47 million ounces. So silverware is one of those things where I suppose if Indians account for 70% of the silverware demand, it gets cheap, they're going to buy it. I mean, it's a family heirloom. If you can get a good, cheap silverware set, they go out and they have at it. Now, you really can't buy silverware in the U.S. I've looked online. You can buy used silverware. There are no silversmiths. There are no companies now that I'm aware of that you can find, that you can go into a store like Macy's and buy a silverware set. It's just not fashionable for people to buy silverware sets. So all this silverware that's being sold, the bulk of it, 70% in India. Jewelry silver demand also very popular in India. So silver jewelry demand hit a decade high last year of 212 million ounces. Again, if it's cheap and you can buy nice pieces of silverware, they do it. Big component of Indian silver demand is also silver jewelry. It's not coins, rounds, and bars. They're not stackers in the same sense. They're buying silver objects of art. They're buying silverware. They're buying jewelry. And they account for a good portion of the increases in demand for silver jewelry and silverware. Industry continues to decline from a peak of 653 million ounces in 2011 down to 578 million ounces last year. So now, if you look, it used to be industry was 65 to 70% of overall silver demand. Recently, now it's down. It's been between 50 and 60%, and that's either been because an increase in the coins, rounds, and bars in 2015, or the steady increases in jewelry and silverware. Let me show you a chart of the overall silver demand moving up or down. The big loser over the last 10 years has been industry. Now that's unfortunate because the biggest demand for silver is industry, and its biggest demand component is falling, down 8.7% from, in 2010 there was 630 some odd million ounces of silver required for industry. Last year, 2018, only 578, a decline of 8.7%. It's very hard for a commodity to rise when it is declining in demand. And that's why when you hear silver is so useful, we could not lead our lives without silver. People are using silver in electronics. Everyone is using electronics, and they're making more electronics every day. And then they're going to use solar, and then they're going to make electric cars. And then and then they're nothing. You have to look at the amount of silver that's actually being used in industry is in a relative decline. If that's the number one demand for silver, this is a fact. I'm not making this up. I'm not this guy. I'm not shilling or whatever disinformation. The facts are that industry, which is the largest component of silver demand, has shown a pretty steep decrease in demand. Unless you get a corresponding increase in the others, it's going to be hard to claim silver shortage and COMEX default and JP Morgan's buying silver and all the other nonsense narratives that you get fed. Now, coins and bars are up 4.1% since 2010. But remember, they are down. If you look at the coins and bars, in 2015, it was 293 million. So last year, it was down to 181 million. So it's a huge decrease in demand for physical coins and bars. Increases, however, in silverware. In 2010, there was 51 million ounces used to make silverware, and last year it was 61 million ounces. Big increase. But remember, jewelry and silverware demand is price sensitive, meaning you will get more silver demand when the price lowers. Industry, the price is inelastic. It doesn't matter. Industry will make whatever industry is going to make based on demand, not based on silver price. Keep that in mind. People will buy more jewelry and more silverware if the price is cheap. People will not use more silver for industry if the price is cheap. That has nothing to do with whether they're going to make more TV sets, more cell phones, more computers. It's got nothing to do with it. They're going to eat that cost no matter what it is. Now, they're happy if it goes down, but they're not going to make more products just because the price of silver is lower. So silverware is up, jewelry's up, price is down. 2010 was a decent price of silver. It was rising towards its all-time high in 2011. Now, coins and bars are a mixed bag on what price does. Now, in 2015, price was down, and it drove coin, round, and bar sales much higher. But then the price has been down in 2017 and 18, and it hasn't helped with the demand. And part of that is, as we've seen in other videos, that silver as an investment metal, a physical, like the stacking concept, only really came about, and you see it in the Silver Eagle sales. I wish I had that chart for you right now. Only really started picking up in 2008. And I attribute that to a lot of the silver channels that came online around that time, advising that silver was the smoking bargain of the century, the most undervalued asset on the planet. All that talk about silver and silver channels. We have so many silver channels now on YouTube. Silver stacking was not a thing back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and early 2000s. It just wasn't. Gold was the metal that people bought when they wanted to, quote, protect themselves against inflation or something else. So it's hard to say what impact a price of silver has on gold, silver coin, round, and bar demand. It was true for a few years. As the price drove, people jumped in. It's a bargain. Now people aren't jumping in because it's a bargain. Now maybe if it drops down to $10, people will buy. Or maybe if the price starts to take off, you may get the FOMO bid. So it's not quite sure. However, coins, rounds, and bars only in 2015 really made a difference in the overall demand profile. What's hurting silver is its industrial demand is down, and that's the largest component of silver. And you can't count on cheap prices driving silverware and jewelry demand. So there has to be something else to give to get demand going for silver. But let's talk about this other, it's not a myth, but it's one of these stories that's repeated, that silver gets thrown out in waste and is never seen again and is never recovered. That's not true. A lot of silver is recovered. When it's cheap, it's not recovered. Let's take a look at scrap silver. Now, this is what they call a supply. Now, they mine about 800, 850, almost 900 million ounces of silver a year. And depending on the year, they may get, as part of their supply, 250, close to 300 million ounces from scrap. So in 2011, they had the highest amount in the decade, 261 million ounces. Now, what happened in 2011, if you remember your silver history? Silver hit an all-time high of $50. And it's no surprise that the scrap silver went from 200 million ounces in 2009 all the way to 263 million ounces in 2011. And it's no surprise now, look at 2015 when the price hit the all-time low, or most recent low. You can see that it was the lowest part in the decade. You can see that 2015, the scrap silver went from 261 million in 2011 all the way down to 150 million in 2015. So it's a myth that they do not recover silver from scrap piles. The only reason they don't recover it is when it's $15, $14 an ounce. It's not worth it. However, there are ways now, and Apple has a machine that actually strips all the precious metals out, and they do over 1 million phones a year where they take all the precious metals out. There are people who will, if the price is high enough, they will buy. You can buy bulk electronic waste. And what you have to do is you have to bring it home, shred the stuff, pull it all out, get it out, and separate it. It's a lot of work. But it's not like it's gone anywhere. It's just in waste piles. And the idea also for scrap silver, so much silver exists in not just the stockpiles around the world, the COMEX and so on, but people have silver they don't realize they have. Very few people have gold that they don't realize they have. But people have silver not only in household items, but in electronics and so on. But they may have a silver spoon here or there. They may, and some people actually have a lot of it. But they don't bring it to market, and it's not counted in anything. So it really is it's a pumper narrative that silver is just not recovered and therefore it's going to be rare. No, the demand for it, first of all, is waning on the industry side. So there's no there's no great demand to have to go out and find silver that they can't get because the demand for industry is rising. It's falling. And if the price rises, as we saw in 2011, magically, that silver comes to market, becomes worth people's while to either find the silver they may have or to sell the silver they may have, or for entrepreneurs to actually try to recover the silver, extract it. I mean, it's a process. It's like mining to try to get all that tiny bits of silver, but it can be done, and it will be done if the price rises. But if the price doesn't rise, it's not going to happen. But that's not a selling point for silver. It's not happening because it doesn't need to happen. There's no reason for it to happen. Declining industry, you've got plenty of silver. There's no reason to go and recover silver that would cost too much to recover. Now let's go through the industrial side though. What is holding up industry? Because if silver is so useful in our lives, and they're finding more uses for it every day. Yeah, they're finding nano uses for it in most cases. But if you look at electronics, for example, well, that's one they always point to. We are in an electronic society. We are, and you cannot have silver. You cannot have Bitcoin without silver. You cannot have TV without silver. You cannot, all this stuff. You cannot be watching this YouTube without silver. And therefore, you should go out and buy my silver nonsense. Silver for electronics, 2010. 301 million ounces according to the Silver Institute. 2011, 290 million ounces. 2012, 266 million ounces. 2013, 266 million ounces. 2014, 263 million ounces. You got a trend here? 2015, 246 million ounces. 2016, 233 million ounces. It's going down. Now, went up a bit in 2018 to 248 million ounces, but that is down 17% from 2010 in your chart right here. Down 8.7%. So industry, that's the electronics portion of it. For brazing alloys and solders, 61 million in 2010, 58 million in 2018. Photography, way down. 76 million ounces in 2009, 39 million ounces in 2018. But what about solar panels? Solar panels, everyone is going to using solar. And solar will drive silver. No, it won't. 67 million in 2011, 53 million in 2014, 74 million ounces in 2016, 89 million ounces in 2017, but 80 million ounces in 2018. So in 2018, they used 9 million ounces fewer than they did in 2017. So silver solar demand is not skyrocketing, and you'll see, and you cannot live your life without silver. Silver is so useful in yoga pants. They are finding more uses for it every day. It gets thrown away and never found again. Silver is rarer than gold. JP Morgan is buying silver. None of these things are true. They're either half true or totally false. And that's why silver is where it is. Those are the facts. I'm not trashing on silver, but I'll repeat before I get before I get off this and start listening, checking out your comments, is you cannot have a metal that is primarily a commodity that serves industrial demand when its primary demand is down 9% in 8 years. Why would the price rise? Oh, it is because of manipulation. And no, it's got nothing to do with manipulation. Because if it really was that valuable, they couldn't manipulate it. But it is the Achilles heels of the central banks. No, it's not. No one cares about silver as a monetary metal. It's got nothing to do with it. Gold, there's a good argument that there's part of central banks and historically and all this stuff. But no one thinks of silver, other than the silver pumpers. Silver's been running for 5,000 years. That is all I need to know. No, you need to know more than that. The point is, silver is an industrial metal, and industry demand is down no matter how many uses they are finding for it every day. It is the most versatile metal on the planet. It conducts electricity. Those are all true. You could say a lot of nice things about copper, tin, aluminum, zinc, too. Doesn't make the demand go higher. It makes the demand in your mind go higher that somehow, oh, well, this is a valuable metal, and I saw it on a YouTube channel, so I better go out and stack it. All right, let's see what you guys think of this. Again, thanks to the Silver Institute. I'll leave a link They've put out a report. It's a free report in a PDF. The link will be in tomorrow's show notes along with the charts. Well, let's see what you guys say. Silver is rarer than gold. All right, let's see. Silver Stacker for Life says, so yeah, I really think you should try to have the Truth Never Told guy on the live chat. He would really get worked up. It would be fun to see someone put that guy in his place. Well, you know what he's done is good. Is he's created this myth that silver is like the grandest and rarest thing on the planet, and everyone wants it. And then he issues small mini mintages of rounds that are attractively priced and attractively designed, and people buy them. So he actually believes what he's saying, and he's made a living out of it. But how many people can make a living out of silver? Where would silver bullets fit in? Silverware? No, they'd fit in under coins, rounds, and bars. Philip Quinn is here. All right. Jack is here. What else do we have? Max Headroom, Medicine Break. I love old silver. Yeah, silverware is cool. When I was a kid, my parents had it. Used to have to shine it up. They had the full set, too. I think they sold it in 1980. It was very nice. Antimicrobial. Yep. Pablo, if the powers that be wanted silver to rise, don't be shocked. Oh, because J.P. Morgan has silver? That story is complete rubbish. They don't have any silver. Other than the silver that's in the vault, the COMEX approved vault, that probably doesn't even belong to them anyway. The idea that they have silver eagles and maple leafs, just BS. All right. Most silver, electronic silver not recovered, no, says Rad Vladley. Depends on what you say is most. There are programs, reclamation programs. I've covered them. Samsung has one, Apple has one. But again, the amount that's in electronics is small in the in each phone. But if it was important enough because the price was high, there are ways of extracting that silver. It's not like it's not recoverable. It's not recoverable at a economic price. But in the last few years, they have now have programs where you turn your old phone in, and they definitely, there's a machine that actually does it. It holds the phone up flat-faced, and then there's like these little screwdrivers that know exactly where to pinpoint in the phone to pull out the precious metals. There's not just silver in phone. There's gold, platinum, palladium. All right, peak silver yet? It looks that way, but I'm not sure it's peak silver because they're running out of silver. I think it's peak silver because it's too expensive. It's not worth the price to go get it at current prices. And if you look at the if you look at the Silver Institute, silver mining in the last 10 years, this really has skyrocketed. It's gone off a little bit in the last couple of years, but really, if I'll read you the numbers here. Silver mining production was only 717 million ounces in 2009. It was 855 million ounces in 2018. It was 791 in 2012. So basically, it hit a peak of 893 in both 2015 and 16, and so it's at 855 now. It's lower than 2016, but it's still higher than the 717 in 2009 and the 753 in 10. And people say, oh, it's declining. No. Not really. It's still a pretty hefty pace. And again, it's meeting demand. If the price goes lower and industry's using less, so that just means some of that demand switches over to cheap silverware and cheap jewelry. All right. What else do we have before we say goodnight? Silver is so useful, says Sharka. I have silver sitting here. I know I'm going to do something with it. What I do not know. Pablo Lewis, start making silver mugs to help out with silverware. It's the long game. I could leave it to my kids, but they all look like you. All right, Pablo's out. Take care, Pablo. Fiona, silver might repeat the fate of aluminum in the 19th century before electrolysis process was discovered. Aluminum was very expensive and then became dirt cheap. She suspects it could be the same with AG. Yeah, I read a story. I don't know if it's apocryphal or spurious, but Napoleon supposedly had a dinner party. And, you know, they very class conscious, had people sitting at different tables. And the best table, the table with all the dignitaries, they got this brand new aluminum. They got to eat with aluminum utensils and everything. And then the cheaper people had the gold. And then the the cheap seats had the silver, but aluminum was supposedly like the best thing you can get if you were with Napoleon. I don't know if that story's true. I don't even know if it's Napoleon. I don't even know if I'm just making it up, but there was a point I did hear that aluminum, when it was first discovered, they made a big deal out of it, and I guess it was shiny. I don't know. All right, well, unless we have any more questions, I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and we will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday night, and then we'll do Saturday night silver with Smaulgld. By the way, don't forget to vote in the poll. If you've seen the latest, SD Bullion has come out with mugs, and they're in direct competition with the Smaulgld mug. I think it's a weak effort. I'll show you why. I'll show you the picture. I think we have the first mover advantage, the best design advantage, but that hasn't deterred James Henry Anderson from tweeting out to me in a very provocative manner, "This guy, your mug domination days are numbered." And there they are. He's putting them up side by side. Smaulgld Super Classic red mug in the very elegant style versus the black and white SD Bullion. Let's talk real money. So there's a poll up on Twitter, poll up in the community section of the Smaulgld YouTube channel where you can vote what's your favorite mug, and I even gave an option of you like them both. We're gonna have James Henry Anderson on. I think he wants to talk about 19th century silver. We covered 17th century silver in the episode A Flood of Silver Heads to China. So check that out. It is the featured YouTube on the Smaulgld channel. And Silk for Silver was the topic of that one. Thank you very much for joining me, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks, Philip.